Hello, Peter for Sunday Zero here, Sirus, and I'm here to review Xenosaga Episode 1, the Wille Zur Macht, or in English, which is the Will to Power. And I know I'm mispronouncing the title a bit. Anyway, I'm gonna review this game because, well, I wanted to review it a few months ago, just because as I was playing Xenoblade, I thought it'd be fitting. But this review, I got really lazy with it, so it's been on hiatus for a few months now. So now I just wanted to get over with, since I already did so much work on it, with writing the script, recording, playing through the game, and etc. Anyway, let's discuss my overall experience with Xenosaga. It's quite little. I've really only finished the first game, and only played a little of the second game. Well, I think more than halfway through the second game. But overall, I do plan on playing through the series, eventually. But I also plan on replaying the first game, since I no longer have a clear save data I had on Xenosaga, and I don't really remember much of Xenosaga 2, so I'm just basically going to play the game from scratch from here onward. But as I'm replaying the first game with a clear save data, I thought it would be fun for me to give my overall opinion on the game in the form of a review. Anyway, without further ado, let's actually begin this review. Xenosaga Episode 1, The Wille Zur Macht, is an RPG with turn-based combat that was developed by Monolith and published by Namco Bandai. Graphically, Xenosaga Episode 1 looks nice, isn't groundbreaking, but I have to say it holds quite well to this day. And I really like the graphical side of the game employs, as the character model looks quite good. Though there is one thing I have to say that hasn't really aged well, and that is the animations. The animations in Xenosaga Episode 1 looks kinda stiff at times, so it can feel a bit dated as you go through the game. It isn't too jarring and you will get used to it, but the animation in this game are quite dated, as I said. And there is the occasional lip-syncing issue as well, but you won't probably notice it too much. Environments also look good for the most part, though there's nothing really remarkable about them. Dungeon design for the most part is pretty standard. They're pretty straightforward, well, most of them, with only a few tricky ones, like the final dungeon, especially the final dungeon for me. Trying to figure out the song thing was really painful for me. But still, I have to say dungeon still pretty standard for the most part. Story wise, I say Xenosaga Episode 1 is good to great. The overall setting of Xenosaga takes place in TC 4767, where mankind now exists on distant planets and colonies. You play as Shion Uzuki, the lead engineer in the Cosmos project in Vector's Industry vs R&D division. And the Cosmos project revolves basically around designing a humanoid weapon designed to fight off the Gnosis, which are mysterious ethereal beings that threaten mankind. Anyway, the main story starts when she and her team are doing their research on the Cosmos project on the ship called Oglinde, when they get suddenly attacked by the Gnosis, which promptly begins the story of Xenosaga. Story-wise, for the most part, I thought the story was really interesting, and while it was a bit slow at the start, after we reached a 2-hour mark, I say I was really intrigued with the plot, and I was hooked to find out what would happen next. It's probably one of the more interesting stories I've seen in RPG. If anything, it's really memorable. And as the first game, it does a great job of introducing the main characters and the overall world of Xenosaga in the entire series. Though there is one flaw with the story in my opinion, and it's the pacing. It takes a while for it to start, but that's not really the only slow part in the game. There are some parts in the story, in the middle part, or even near the ending, where it can feel a bit slow. It's still really an interesting story overall, and there are some awesome cutscenes. But story can feel a bit slow at times when I was playing through the game. But still, the story is pretty good, even with the pacing issues. The characters are also great, each having their own distinct personality and are pretty interesting. Though being the first in a 3-part series, the majority of the character development and some of the backstory like Junior's are in the second and third game. Voice acting is good for the most part. The main cast is properly voiced, though like I said before, there is a lip syncing problem. Though, there is one thing I have to give to the voice acting. There's one voice actor that really does a fantastic job. And that is Crispin Freeman's Albedo.
Do you know what he said while he coughed up his lifeblood? Except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. Wheat, eh? There's enough of it. We can afford to waste as much as we want. Like my head, you see?
He does such a great job with the character. That's almost scary. Okay, next thing I'd talk about is the soundtrack. The soundtrack of Xenosaga Episode 1 is a bit tricky. It's tricky because the individual tracks are pretty good. It's just that there isn't really many of them. It's really only using cutscenes. Most of the music most of the thing you hear when you're on the field is basically ambient noises, which I guess can add to the overall atmosphere, but still. Overall, Xenosaga has great presentation with story, characters, and the overall visuals has aged well, but it is a bit dated with the stiff animations and the lip syncing problems. Oh yeah, also forget to mention that there's a couple of censored cutscenes in this game. I mean, there are censored cutscenes throughout the entire series, but the censored cutscenes in this game isn't too bad compared to the second and third game. Heck, in this game, there's one particular censored cutscene that's really strange to me, because when you come down to it, that censored cutscene is more brutal than the uncensored cutscene. Yeah, I'm not sure how that came about. Anyway, thought I would mention that.
Charging.
For Xenosaga gameplay, the first thing I go into is its combat system. Xenosaga uses a turn-based combat system, and I found it pretty fun. In combat, there's the HP, EP, AP, boost, event, and menu option. HP is self-explanatory, while EP is basically the MP equivalent of this game, and Ether Techniques is basically the equivalent of spells of this game. AP is used to determine what kind of attack you can use in a turn. Just as having 4 AP will have your standard attack, but if you save up to 6 AP, you're able to do a much more powerful attack in addition to your standard attack. Though do note that you're able to lower the AP usage of your more powerful attacks as you progress the game. AP is also used to determine whether you can use Ether Techniques. Boost allows your character to have an extra turn when the boost gauge is filled up. The event slot basically tells you what kind of bonuses will occur at an enemy's turn or your turn, but it's kinda random, so yeah. The menu option allows you to use items, use eggs, Ether Techniques, and other options. Most of the stuff you can do in the menu is self-explanatory, but eggs is pretty unique. It's basically an option that you're able to use giant mecha for certain characters, and the mecha have their individual HP, AP, and certain kind of attacks. Overall, the combat system is pretty good. There's a good amount of depth to it with the AP and boost system, and there's also a weakness system where certain attacks will be strong against certain type of enemies. You can also change the character position, which is also important in battle. But there is a problem with it. The animation is a bit slow, and the eggs option is kinda useless in my opinion. Well, they're not useless, but they're not really that much stronger than your humanoid characters in the game, so I didn't really see the point in using them. And if you get KO'd with the eggs, you can't revive them. The character using the eggs is stuck there. So you basically lose one party member permanently for the rest of the battle when you lose an eggs. So yeah. Next thing I go into is the leveling system. Xenosaga got several progression systems in place. I have to say that the game is great in this department. In battle you get experience points, T points, E points, and S points. Experience points is pretty self-explanatory. When you get enough to level up, you get stats boost. T points is used to upgrade your tech attack in terms of tech power, speed, and weight, which is really useful, as speed really upgrades your decrease your AP usage from 6 AP to 4 AP, which means you can do your strong attacks from the start instead of just waiting for your character to get 6 AP. You can also set up what type of tech attacks you use in the tech attack menu. Each character also got their own unique set of tech attacks, which really makes each character really unique from each other. You can also use T points in order to upgrade characters' individual stats, which really gives you a lot of freedom with how you can build up your character. E points, or ether points, are used to progress the character ether tree, and there are branching paths you can take, so there is a good amount of freedom to how you build up your character ether techniques. Each character also got their own unique skill ether trees, which also make them pretty unique. You can also transfer skills from one character to another, which also gives the progression system a good amount of freedom as well. S points, or skill points, is used to extract skills from equipment. Overall, the leveling system is great. It gives you a sense of progression, but also gives you tons of freedom with how you can build up your character, but also make each character really unique from each other, even with the amount of freedom you have. Customization wise, it's got the standard customization with the weapon, armor and stuff, and the egg/mecha customization is pretty good. Exploration wise, Xenosaga is pretty linear. Really linear. There's not really much exploration in the game, if I have to be honest. Mech wise, well, on the box art, it says it has over 80 hours of gameplay. Yeah, that was a big lie. A really big lie. I was able to complete the game at 30 hours. Overall, the gameplay is really good. The turn-based combat system has depth, it is engaging, and the progression system is great. It might not have much exploration, and the box totally lies about the game length, but it's still a really enjoyable game. But there is one fatal flaw to the gameplay. That flaw is the cutscenes. And no, I don't think the cutscenes are boring. I think they're pretty interesting by themselves. But Xenosaga Episode 1 doesn't really have a balance between gameplay and cutscenes, so the cutscenes can seem a bit long at times compared to the gameplay. I mean, it's not true. The overall game is 30 hours, and there's probably 8 hours of cutscenes in the game. But with how it's paced in the game itself, you can feel that the cutscenes drag on a bit. But even if the game doesn't really have a good balance between cutscenes and gameplay, I still have to say the game is a really fun game to play. The gameplay, the turn-based combat is fun, engaging. The leveling system / progression system is great, and the customization is also pretty good. Overall, a really fun game to play.
Punch from a girly like you wouldn't even dent.
Overall, I say Xenosaga Episode 1 is a really good game. It has a great story and a pretty interesting cast of characters. The visuals has aged well considering when it was released. The gameplay with turn-based combat is really engaging, got a good amount of depth with it. The progression system is great, and the customization is also pretty good. Though there are a good amount of issues with it, mostly with how the gameplay can be a bit slow with the slow animations. And it really does have some pacing issues in terms of the story being a bit slow at one part, or the game not being balanced between gameplay and cutscene. But even with all the flaws this game has, I still had a great time playing through the game. I personally give Xenosaga Episode 1 Wille Zur Macht a personal score of 8 out of 10. A really good game, but there are some issues, like the pacing.